We have Fox team coverage tonight. Jennifer Griffin's in Seattle with the Clinton campaign as the Democrat nominee tries to stay out of the way of the developing Trump story. John Roberts with Team Trump in Charlotte and the details of those new allegations and how he's pushing back. But we begin with Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry, who has spotted some communications that call President Obama's statements into question tonight.
Certainly do, Brett. Good to see you. President Obama was drawn deeper into Hillary Clinton's email scandal today as the number of emails hacked from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's account reached over 10,000.
6 days before Hillary Clinton first addressed the public about her email problems, John Podesta fired off a March 4th, 2015 note to Cheryl Mills invoking President Obama. Podesta writing to Mills, quote, "Think we should hold emails to and from POTUS? That's the heart of his executive privilege. We could get them to ask for that. They may not care, but it seems like they will." Remember, the president downplayed his email contact with Clinton.
Did you know about Hillary Clinton's use of private email server?
No.
While she was Secretary of State?
No.
As for Podesta asking in March 2015 whether they should hold back emails between the president and Secretary Clinton, she made this promise a few days later.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
Whether all work-related email was then turned over to the public is another matter. On March 3rd, 2015, Republican Trey Gowdy issued a subpoena for Clinton's email to be preserved. And then on March 20th, he demanded the server. 3 days later, there was a lunch between the president and Clinton with top aides like Podesta, according to another new email just out today. And at the end of March, according to the FBI, the IT firm that maintained the server used BleachBit to delete thousands of emails. Under sworn testimony, Clinton asserted she had no prior knowledge of the emails being deleted. Pressed on the Podesta leak today, a State Department spokesman suggested executive privilege was invoked to hold back at least some emails.
I believe, and I'd have to double check on that, but I believe with correspondence with the president, there was, I don't know if it was executive privilege, but there was a concern that those emails not be made public.
Donald Trump has raised questions about whether more Clinton work emails were deleted. And today, his running mate, Mike Pence, bemoaned the fact that the WikiLeaks emails are getting less attention than questions about the Republican nominee's treatment of women.
But at the time that many in the national media are chasing after these unsubstantiated allegations, it's remarkable to me they continue to literally ignore the hard evidence that's flowing out of Hillary Clinton's years as Secretary of State in the Clinton Foundation.
There was also a major development on the Clinton Foundation, with another email showing that after Chelsea Clinton raised questions about the foundation's inner workings, a law firm known for focusing on philanthropic issues, Simpson Thacher, was brought in to conduct a major review in 2010 and concluded, quote, some interviewees reported conflicts of those raising funds or donors, some of whom may have an expectation of quid pro quo benefits in return for gifts. One expert called it fraud.
The audits that had been provided by the Clinton Foundation were materially inaccurate.
Now, White House spokesman Eric Schultz was pressed by reporters today about those emails with Hillary Clinton. He cited a long-standing tradition that the president reserves the right to invoke executive privilege. Interesting as well, he said that he doesn't believe these emails between Obama and Clinton will ever be made public, Brett.
Okay, obviously there are these speeches in there that Hillary Clinton has delivered. What about that? Anything?
Well, she got beaten up a bit. You remember days ago about transcripts that came out that suggested she said, I no longer understand the middle class. Now there's another one where in 2014 she was talking to GE executives and said, look, food stamps are great because they can help spur economic growth. Nancy Pelosi said something like that a few years ago and took a lot of heat for it. And I think it suggests, look, if she's elected president, she's leading in the polls right now, she's going to want to expand food stamps, which already are costing taxpayers a lot of money, and she thinks it's going to help the economy.
They've increased. And the Clinton campaign continues to hit on the Russian angle and the U.S. intel pointing to Russia.
Absolutely.
Vice President even weighing in?
Yeah, he just, they released something from NBC's Meet the Press. He's talking to them over the weekend and saying that they're going to send a warning signal to Russia. The U.S. government, the administration obviously clearly believes Russia's behind these hacks. And Jen Palmieri today, to give their side, said from the Clinton campaign, look, they believe the Russians were involved in this hack of John Podesta's email. They think the Republicans are not admitting that there's incredible intervention right now by the Russians in our election. And Palmieri said something else interesting. She said, look, the Clinton camp has taken some extraordinary measures in recent days to make sure that their communications are more secure. I bet they probably wish they'd done that a little sooner.
What's interesting is that they say that they're very concerned about this hack and how extensive it is, but Hillary Clinton's server was ironclad. Nobody got into that.
Right. Although when she's been pressed on that, we don't really know. You'll remember in the Judicial Watch testimony that just came out that Shannon Bream was reporting on last night. She wouldn't answer questions about cybersecurity. Her lawyer wouldn't let her do that. So was her server ever breached? That was something in the FBI investigation. Everybody's wondering about the details.
Last thing, Democrats are pushing the FBI to now investigate.
They want an investigation of whether there's collusion between the Trump-Pence campaign and the Russians. Remember Roger Stone, who's been close to Donald Trump, he had said some stuff in recent months that maybe John Podesta would be targeted, suggesting that maybe he had some inside information with WikiLeaks or with the Russians. Look, this may go nowhere, but the Democrats are putting some heat on the Trump campaign tonight.
All right, we'll follow it, Ed.
Good to
Thank
see
you. Donald Trump is pushing back against two more accusers tonight. They are the latest women to come forward with allegations about sexual misconduct by the GOP nominee. These are new allegations from years ago, in one case more than 2 decades ago, that Trump firmly denies. They come as the Trump campaign seeks votes in the must-win state of North Carolina. Senior national correspondent John Roberts is with the Trump team in Charlotte right now. Good evening, John.
Good evening to you, Brett. North Carolina, where a new Marist poll shows Donald Trump trailing Hillary Clinton by 3 points now. Donald Trump eager to get back onto the message that appeared to be a winning one for him a month ago. But his campaign is reeling from a series of drips of alleged incidents from years ago in some cases that shows no sign of abating. The latest allegations against Trump come from 2 women in California. One, Summer Zervos, a former contestant on The Apprentice, says she was accosted by Trump after being invited to join him for dinner.
I tried to push him away. I pushed his chest, put space between us. I said, "Come on, man, get real." He repeated my words back to me. "Get real," as he began thrusting his genitals.
The other, Kristen Anderson, a 46-year-old photographer, claims as an aspiring model in New York City in the early 1990s, she was groped by Donald Trump at a nightclub.
The person on my right, who unbeknownst to me at that time was Donald Trump, put their hand up my skirt. He did touch my vagina through my underwear. Absolutely.
These are lies being pushed by the media and the Clinton campaign to try and keep their grip on our country. They are all false, totally invented, fiction, all 100% totally and completely fabricated.
Trump claims he is the victim of a conspiracy of global elites, which is trying to destroy the movement he has created so they can maintain power. Today, he took aim at Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim, who is a major shareholder in the New York Times.
Reporters at the New York Times, they're not journalists. They're corporate lobbyists for Carlos Slim and for Hillary Clinton.
Campaigning for Hillary Clinton in Cleveland today, President Obama mocked Trump's claims of a global conspiracy.
This is a guy who spent all his time hanging around trying to convince everybody he was a global elite. And now suddenly he's acting like he's a populist out there. Man, I'm going to fight for working people. Come on, man.
With new polls showing Trump still in the running in the North Carolina battleground, trailing Clinton by 4 points in a new Wall Street Journal NBC News poll, Trump is trying to get back on the attack, hammering Clinton over revelations in the WikiLeaks email dump.
Saudi Arabia paid Bill Clinton a lot of money to make a speech and then got an arms deal from Hillary and her State Department.
And just moments ago, a response from Donald Trump to the latest allegations leveled at him by Summer Zervos, the woman who we played at the very beginning of this report, saying, quote, "I vaguely remember Ms. Zervos as one of the many contestants on The Apprentice over the years. To be clear, I never met her at a hotel or greeted her inappropriately a decade ago. That is not who I am as a person. It is not how I have conducted my life. In fact, Ms. Zervos continued to contact me for help, emailing my office on April 14th of this year, asking that I visit her restaurant in California. Beyond that, the media is now creating a theater of absurdity that threatens to tear our democratic process apart and poison the minds of the American public." We're bound to hear more about all of this in just a little while when Donald Trump takes the stage here in Charlotte. Brett?
We'll monitor it. John, thank you. Hillary Clinton is preaching to the political choir tonight on the West Coast. She's appearing in a region that is obviously solidly Democratic, if not enthusiastically behind her in particular. She's getting ready to be off the trail for a few days and not answering questions about the WikiLeaks emails. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin reports tonight from Seattle. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. Well, Hillary Clinton did not campaign in any battleground states today. She is, however, attending a fundraiser behind me at the Paramount Theater in Seattle after raking in $10 million at 2 fundraisers in California.
Woo! Hillary Clinton is feeling confident enough to take 2 days to fundraise on the West Coast, avoiding press who might ask tough questions about the latest WikiLeaks revelations, instead sitting for a friendly interview with Ellen DeGeneres. The two made light of the last debate and embraced the hashtag sensation Ken Bone.
That was the best dancing I've ever done.
At a fundraiser in Seattle hosted by the hip-hop artist Macklemore, Clinton urged her supporters not to let up. Her most powerful surrogate, President Obama, campaigned in Ohio.
If you felt the burn in the primaries, you need to vote.
But instead of appealing to Republicans, as Clinton has, who are turned off by Trump, President Obama chose to point the blame.
You said you're the party of family values. What, you weren't appalled earlier when he was saying degrading things about women? When he was judging them based on a score of are they a 2 or a 10? That wasn't enough for you?
In an appeal to African American voters, the Clinton campaign released a new ad narrated by actor Morgan Freeman. In a WikiLeaks released email to Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta, Neera Tanden, a key Clinton surrogate, expressed contempt for one African American leader, the former NAACP president, after he endorsed Senator Bernie Sanders in the primary. Quote, "I know there are a million reasons to desperately want Hillary to win, but being jealous, feeling that he has no power is a particularly good one." And while defending her husband, another powerful Clinton surrogate brought up a time Hillary Clinton would just as soon forget.
I can't make an excuse for Bill Clinton's conduct. He paid a price. He was impeached. And he expressed his deep sorrow and acknowledged what he did.
Another WikiLeaks email showed that senior Clinton advisors were critical of the White House for not firing anyone senior at the Department of Health and Human Services after that disastrous rollout of Obamacare. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin in Seattle. Jennifer, thank you. Now to foreign policy. The Obama administration is portraying yesterday's missile strike on radar sites in Yemen as a limited self-defense matter and not a de facto escalation into that country's civil war. Experts in the region, though, paint a different picture of the tension in the waters off of Yemen. Correspondent Connor Powell is monitoring the situation tonight from our Middle East newsroom.
The bloody civil war in Yemen showing no signs of letting up. And now, new fears the conflict could expand, drawing the U.S. into a direct confrontation with Iran. The Islamic Republic ordered 2 ships to the Red Sea after the U.S. Navy destroyed 3 mobile radar guidance systems used by Iranian-linked Houthi rebels in Yemen.
With regard to the Iranian Navy activities, I'll leave it to the Iranians to describe the disposition of their ships.
The Pentagon targeted the radar sites Thursday after multiple missiles were fired at the USS Mason from inside Houthi-controlled territory. It is the latest in a long line of confrontations where Iran and its proxies have harassed American naval ships in the region. In January, Iran's Revolutionary Guard captured 10 U.S. sailors after their 2 boats drifted into Iranian waters.
Unless we pick a spot to start saying, you cannot push us here, this is as far as you can push us, they will continue to expand their provocations.
The Pentagon said Thursday, however, the strikes against the Houthis were carried out to protect U.S. personnel and were not connected to the broader conflict in Yemen, let alone the region. But the U.S. is already deeply involved in Yemen's civil war, providing logistics and refueling Saudi warplanes conducting airstrikes in Yemen. Saudi Arabia's war against the rebels is deeply controversial. Its airstrikes have killed thousands of civilians, including more than 140 people last week in Yemen's capital, Sana'a. More crucially, the Obama administration has yet to explain how America's involvement in the war against the Houthis advances U.S. national security interests.
The White House says it is conducting a review of its support for Saudi Arabia in Yemen, but with tensions escalating fast there, the potential for a deadly confrontation is growing fast. Brett?
Connor Powell in our Middle East newsroom. Connor, thank you. President Obama is sending 500 more soldiers to Iraq ahead of the expected Iraqi offensive to retake the city of Mosul. The troops are from the 1st Infantry Division headquartered at Fort Riley, Kansas. They're tasked with assisting in the training of Iraqi forces. 3 members of a Kansas group face federal charges tonight related to an alleged plot to bomb an apartment building filled with Somali immigrants. The charges against the 3 Southwest Kansas men were announced today. Federal prosecutors allege the 3 are members of a group calling itself the Kansas Security Force. President Obama is once again defying Congress and circumventing the economic embargo of Cuba. Correspondent Kevin Cork is at the White House tonight with the latest on this. Good evening, Kevin. What is the new insight into this presidential directive, and really the question a lot of critics are asking, can it be undone by a future occupant of the White House?
Yeah, great questions indeed, and good evening to you, Brett. First of all, let's just make it plain. This is really an expansion of the White House's plan to encourage more trade and travel between the U.S. and the communist island nation that is 90 miles to our south. But it's also important to point out that there was a big part of this directive that I think a lot of people will find interesting. It ends restrictions on buying Cuban cigars and rum. Now, under the new measures, Americans can bring home as many as they can manage as long as they're just for personal use and the proper taxes are paid. The president saying in a statement, listen, challenges remain and very real differences between our governments persist on issues of democracy and human rights, but I believe that engagement is the best way to address those differences, that is, and make progress on behalf of our interests. Now, among those who are rejecting this glasnost, if you will, this newfound relationship between the U.S. and Cuba, of course, is Florida GOP Senator Marco Rubio. In a scathing statement he wrote today, in part, that the Obama administration, along with American companies, in collusion with American companies, is now responsible for essentially bankrolling a communist dictatorship which works each day to undermine America's security and national interests. And in answer to your question, listen, administration officials acknowledge, Brett, that this could be undone by a future occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but they're hoping that all the momentum generated since the reopening of ties with Cuba will enable that to not happen, and hopefully, at least in their eyes, keep going between the two countries. Brett?
Yeah, that'll be a point of contention. Also tonight, according to new analysis, healthcare insurers pulling back on Obamacare could cause almost 1.5 million people to lose their coverage soon. What can you tell us about that?
Boy, I tell you, this thing is really cratering, and there's no other way, I think, that you can honestly describe what's happening right now with the marketplaces in Obamacare. This is part of a Bloomberg study, Brett, that found 1.4 million people in 32 different states could lose the Obamacare plans that they have right now. Now, that's in part because of major insurers opting out of the individual coverage. We're talking about people like Aetna and United Health. And this is big because it means that instead of growing in 2017, Obamacare could actually end up shrinking. As of March 31st, the law did cover 11.1 million people. Now, we've been watching the calendar, my friend. November 1st is the next enrollment period. We'll be watching it very carefully to see what happens. Back to you.
Kevin Cork, live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. The government says it racked up a $587 billion deficit for the just completed fiscal year 2016. That is an increase of 34% from the year before. Spending went up 5% while revenues stayed flat. In simple terms, the government borrows 15 cents of every dollar it spends. Stocks were up today. The Dow rose 39. The S&P 500 finished ahead a half. The Nasdaq gained a point. For the week, the Dow lost a half percentage point. The S&P 500 dropped 1. The Nasdaq fell 1.5. Donald Trump is not the only Republican facing some serious leadership questions tonight. Many in the GOP believe House Speaker Paul Ryan may have badly misplayed his dealing with the party's presidential nominee. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen reports there are concerns that could come back to haunt him.
Facing blowback from his GOP conference over his treatment of Donald Trump in recent days, House Speaker Paul Ryan sharply attacked Hillary Clinton and the America that he claims she would, as president, remake in her image.
There's no room to run, no chance to grow, or to fail for that matter. People are not needed, they're counted and sorted. This is how you can so casually classify whole groups of people as baskets of deplorables.
Yet Ryan also brandished the policy agenda he has issued over the course of this year and said this is our party's vision for America, an implicit rebuke of the GOP's controversial nominee, and Ryan once again kept his distance from Donald Trump.
I know many people are still making their choice. I know some people are avoiding making any choice at all, and I don't begrudge anybody for that.
We will make America great again. Thank you.
Throughout the Trump cyclone of 2016, Ryan and other GOP leaders have struggled with the candidate's mercurial style and ideological heresies. But after last week's release of an old audio tape featuring lewd comments by Trump, Ryan effectively abandoned the nominee, who then proceeded to turn in a strong debate performance against Clinton.
And I think she should be ashamed of herself, if you want to know the truth.
Now Trump faces a flood of allegations, all strongly denied, that he made unwanted sexual advances to women over the years. On Twitter, Trump has blasted Ryan for being weak, ineffective, and disloyal. Running mate Mike Pence was, as ever, more diplomatic.
Paul Ryan is my friend, but honestly, I'd like to see Republican leaders supporting the Republican nominee for president of the United States.
Analysts see the House Speaker walking a delicate line, not always nimbly.
He really is in an untenable position. I think Paul Ryan's trying to go out and be a voice against Hillary Clinton in order to try to motivate Republican voters to turn out for their Republican congressmen and senators and try to preserve the majorities in the Congress for the Republicans.
And perhaps as an additional olive branch to the Trump forces, after all, the man won 14 million votes in the GOP primaries, a record. Ryan has asked Trump supporter Congressman Kevin Cramer of North Dakota to deliver this week's GOP response to the weekly presidential address. Brett?
James, thank you. There is still confidence that Republicans will hold on to the House. However, at 247 to 188, Democrats have to win 30 seats. There's less confidence today than there was 2 weeks ago. On the Senate side, it's much more precarious for the Republican majority. And we thought we'd take a look around at some of the closest Senate races around the country. If you look at the closest right now in the polls, it's right here in Pennsylvania. Democrat Katie McGinty, a former state and federal environmental policy official, is up against incumbent Senator Pat Toomey. As we take a look at the polls, McGinty is currently leading in the average of polls by less than a point. Now, battleground Pennsylvania, energy is a big deal. Toomey has pushed for a future of coal and natural gas in his re-election bid. McGinty, meanwhile, has pledged to support clean energy measures. It's a big issue there. Toomey has not been crystal clear about his support for Donald Trump, a fact that his opponent has called him out on.
I do think that it's incumbent upon Senator Toomey to come clean with the people of Pennsylvania about his support for Donald Trump. He keeps trying to dodge the question, but what more do we need to know?
The choice really comes down to whether we're going to elect a Hillary Clinton-Katie McGinty combination that will simply make permanent the disastrous failures of the Obama administration, or whether we're going to be able to change this track we're on, this wrong track that we're on, and get America moving again in the right direction.
And obviously questions have increased in recent days. Now let's take a look at another state very close here in North Carolina. Deborah Ross, a former Democratic state legislator, up against sitting incumbent Republican Senator Richard Burr, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. You can see Burr here holds on to a slight lead. Deborah Ross has repeatedly said that Senator Burr has done little in his time in Washington, D.C. for North Carolina. Burr is trying to portray Ross, a former ACLU lawyer, as someone who would not be tough on crime. So Donald Trump coming up in a lot of these Senate races around the country. As far as the Clinton Foundation and the investigations into the email server and WikiLeaks, not coming up as much. We want to take a look at a congressional race right now, and that is in this state of New York. It's a congressional race that is really tight, and it's also been getting a lot of coverage because it's rough and tumble. Correspondent David Lee Miller has that story.
New York State's 19th Congressional District. It's a mix of rural communities and economically challenged small cities. It is also a battleground for control of Congress. Incumbent Republican Chris Gibson is not running for re-election. Vying for his seat are a law professor who recently moved to the district from Brooklyn, Democrat Zephyr Teachout. She is an acolyte of Bernie Sanders and features him in her ads. Teachout's opponent is lobbyist and former state senator, Republican John Faso, often described as a Paul Ryan conservative.
I'm a gun owner.
Issues including gun control, jobs, and the environment are being overshadowed by Donald Trump. Although Republican Faso has called Trump's remarks on women appalling, he says he still supports the Republican ticket. He remains unclear if he will cast a ballot for Trump.
I will not be voting for Mrs. Clinton. I haven't yet decided who I'm going to vote for president.
My opponent has been talking out of two sides of his mouth on Trump.
Recent polling shows the race is in a statistical dead heat, with the district evenly split between registered Republicans and Democrats. The candidates will debate again later this month in what could be a one-issue race.
My gut tells me that Donald Trump is going to be the deciding factor in this race and many others.
According to an analyst, Faso and other Republican candidates could be helped by polling that shows a Trump defeat in November. The reason? Voters might feel the need to balance out a Democratic presidency. That's what happened in 2012. Although Obama carried the region, a Republican won the congressional race. Brett?
Split ticket. We'll see. David Lee Miller, thank you. The panel is next. We'll deal with a potpourri of, well, ugliness that has become this presidential race. Stay here.
Stay tuned. I know that there's more information that's going to be coming out that'll back his claim that this is all categorically false.
He then asked me to sit next to him. I complied. He then grabbed my shoulder and began kissing me again very aggressively and placed his hand on my breast.
When somebody makes, am I right? When somebody makes an accusation that you did something and you weren't, you never saw this person before. It's a lie, total lie. It's fabrication. Sometimes they do it for fame. Maybe they get money. Who knows? And he went after me on the plane. Yeah, I'm going to go after. Believe me, she would not be my first choice. That I can tell you.
Donald Trump responding today to two new allegations of sexual assault. This brings us to the number of 8 in recent days, releasing a statement that the latest one, sitting alongside Gloria Allred, Ms. Zervos, he did remember from The Apprentice, but denies that he had any contact with her that was inappropriate. Meantime, on NBC, Vice President Biden was asked why should Bill Clinton's past affairs and the allegations against him, whether that should matter.
As you know, Donald Trump is bringing up everything Bill Clinton about right now. Should that matter?
No, it shouldn't matter. Look, I can't make any excuses for Bill Clinton's conduct. And I wouldn't attempt to make any excuses for the conduct. But he paid a price for it. He paid a price. He was impeached. And he expressed his deep sorrow and acknowledged what he did.
Okay, there you see the two sides on these two issues. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, political columnist with The Washington Times. Tim Farley, host of Morning Briefing POTUS on Sirius XM Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Charlie, this defense today was obviously vigorous. He denied everything, but he did a little bit more than that in how he described each of these allegations and the women.
Yeah, that is not, the great thing about Donald Trump all along is that he doesn't play by normal political playbooks, but going after the looks of these people it's terrible, and it's a terrible way to try to deal with this. A far better way to deal with it would be to just, make his blanket denials, refuse, deny everything, and then go back to talking about issues. And every time somebody attacks him on it, just go back to talking about the issues.
He said that today. He said, all my advisors say, just talk about the economy, talk about jobs, talk about this, but I have to defend myself, and I'm going to. And did you see that,
Yeah, there is something sort of pathological about it, and obviously it's part of why he has been so successful at this game, at the game of politics, is because he does things. He listens to his gut and he attacks back. But this is not a smart way of doing it. And honestly, I think a lot of people. I think that he actually could make some, have some traction with a lot of people by doing this issues argument, because people are sick and tired of hearing about all of it. They're tired of hearing about the Clinton stuff, and they're tired of hearing about this stuff.
All right, a couple things. We should say that the allegations are serious. We are sitting here with 4 men, which is, not by plan that we had to deal with this topic, but you know, there are allegations of sexual assault that have to be treated seriously. We can't confirm these. Donald Trump is denying them, but the women are obviously telling their story, some in a very emotional way. Tim, politically, how does this fall, and can he somehow, you know, change this dynamic that has been developing since the debate?
That's the point. He has the braggadociousness that he has talked about before is one of the things that hurts him. It fits into this pattern of the accusations if he is the way he appears to be and what he said in the tape, and then even though he denied it on Sunday and everyone knew it was going to be like the Gary Hart, yeah, go ahead and follow me, and that's exactly what it wound up being. So for Donald Trump, interestingly enough, a couple of things that are a problem. Number one is it kind of fits, like I said, the personality. Number two, it's also putting him on the defense. Yes, he's a pretty good counterpuncher, but it's hard to counterpunch against a whole bunch of people. It's not just Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or President Obama. It's a whole bunch of sources. It's a lot of women, and it's quite frankly a lot of Republicans. So now he's punching back against as many people as he can. The third and final part of this, I think, is that, to Charlie's point, he's not talking about issues that could actually help him a little bit, but he is so wrapped up in this one particular story, and there's no way, by the way, that he's going to be able to come up with this evidence that he keeps talking about that is lying in wait somewhere.
Well,
like,
so far we haven't seen it.
Like the State Department communists, you know, under McCarthy or something. It's just no way to prove that.
At the same time, Vice President Biden saying yes, but what Bill Clinton did is not relevant.
Of course it's relevant, but to a separate issue. The issue is the utter hypocrisy of Democrats. We're the greatest feminists in the late 90s, the ones who'd spoken forever about honoring women, were the ones who defended him during his scandals, knowing for sure that he wasn't telling the truth, knowing for sure that he had abused women, because some of them are actually open about this. He would defend them on abortion for political reasons, cynical political reasons. And the irony is that it's happening now in the reverse. But look, I think Charlie's right. For Trump to claim, this is his defense against the charges, the women weren't attractive enough and I should have assaulted them. That's essentially what he said. You can't come up with a worse defense because it completely validates what was on the tape, that this is what he does when he's attracted to women. And you can, I don't know who to believe, but the more he lashes at these women, up to 8 right now, the more he has no chance of getting anything else looked at, particularly the WikiLeaks, which could be helping him right now. And the more he reinforces this image of him, perhaps not a sexual predator, he denies that, but certainly from the tape, somebody who is extremely touchy about images of his masculinity, which is why he has to defend himself for groping what he thinks is an unattractive woman.
Right. His supporters say his wife stands by him and that he has asked for forgiveness for past dalliances, is what they say. I think this is not going to be over anytime soon, but we will cover it no matter what. Meantime, the other side of the coin is this WikiLeaks story. This is the president talking to CBS.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
At the same time, everybody else learned it through news reports.
Did you know about Hillary Clinton's use of private email server?
No.
While she was Secretary of State?
No.
Well, there are emails that show a lot of communication about what to do. For example, John Podesta emailing March 4th. By the way, I think that interview was March 7th. March 4th, think we should hold emails to and from POTUS, President of the United States. That's the heart of his executive privilege. Goes on with the back and forth of all the emails that have gone between President of the United States and Hillary Clinton. I mean, this starts to get really interesting.
And it's the missed opportunity for a Trump campaign, because everything that Donald Trump has said about how the system is rigged, how both politics in general and the Clintons themselves, the way politics works in this town, it fits perfectly into all of that. As this is unfolding over here, you're finding out in almost in real time by looking at all of these emails that it's all true. It really is. The Clintons have their fixer, they have their enforcer, their consigliere.
Quickly, Tim, another thing that comes up again and again in these emails that we've seen so far, Chain 4, Foundation donors. This is a document, a governance review conducted by a private firm attached to an email to Podesta, in which it says some interviewees, again this is the Clinton Foundation, reported conflicts of those raising funds or donors, some of whom may have had an expectation of quid pro quo benefits in return for gifts. I mean, it's right there in black and white.
There is so much in here, but the problem is it's an overwhelming amount for the average voter who is not nearly as engaged in the details. And quite frankly, the daily email blast is something that over time people become inured to. They sort of see it as another chapter in this story that has something to do with emails. And I understand the facts are there. There's also a sense that Hillary Clinton is distant from a lot of this, that she is the third party. She is like Willie Chichi in The Godfather 2. There's a lot of buffers. There's a lot of buffers between Mrs. Clinton and the rest. And so, as a result of that, she is sort of floating above this. Yeah, John Podesta makes a great risotto, but that's pretty much what we see right now.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to continue to follow it, dig into the weeds here, and continue to report on it. But if I can get Godfather 2 into any panel, I'm happy to do it. Next up, the Friday Lightning Round. We start with Charles. Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, addressing a crowd today, talking about issues, talking about policy, not really talking a lot about Donald Trump or taking questions about all of this. This is the Friday Lightning Round. We're back here. Tim, what about Speaker Ryan and how this is breaking down?
Job one for him, keep the majority. He's trying to do that. Keep his dignity. He talked today about fighting Bob La Follette, who was 100 years ago a great fighting Republican senator from Wisconsin. He imagines himself to be able to strike this balance, to support the people he needs to get elected and yet not alienate the Donald Trump people. It's kind of the Kobayashi Maru, if I could throw in another movie thing. It's the unwinnable scenario for him. At least thus far, he's walking that line, but it's going to be tough for him to maintain it through election.
Right now, most people think the House stays Republican. We'll see. We'll watch that closely. Okay, next topic, Iran moving warships off the coast of Yemen and the U.S. engaged in a tense situation there.
It shows how completely wrong was the entire Obama assumption for the Iran deal. His idea was it would moderate Iran. There were moderates in Tehran. If you appease them with this deal, you lift the embargo, the boycott by other countries, they would become amenable and you can negotiate with them. The exact opposite has happened. As predictable and predicted by all the critics, the money is now pouring into the Revolutionary Guards, and the Iranians, seeing the weakness of the administration and how much it will sacrifice anything in order to keep the deal going, so Iran won't walk away. It allows Iran to walk over everyone in Iraq, in Syria, and Lebanon, and now in Yemen.
Well, what was striking is that the administration was so adamant that this was a limited defensive move, firing these missiles into Yemen, and that it has nothing to do with getting into the civil war in Yemen.
It's part of the appeasement of the self-deterrence. We have this deal. The Iranians have the breaking of the sanctions. We have as yet nothing. So the Iranians are in control. And the nightmare of the administration is that Iran pushes it to the limit and then gets upset with something we do and announces that its part of the bargain is over, restarts the program, and they have all the benefits, economic and political, and we have nothing.
All right, quickly, last topic, Obamacare. Bloomberg has a new analysis that some 1.4 million people could get off Obamacare because of the situation that's developing in each of these states in coming days. I mean, we're talking perhaps before the election.
In a normal election, that would be the October surprise. Yeah, that would be the October surprise. And as it turns out, not only can you not keep your old plan, you can't keep your new plan either. And, you know, in a normal election, it would be devastating, especially with the comments from Bill Clinton last couple of weeks. But the
that
truth
it was
is,
crazy and really hard on small business.
Yep. But the bottom line is, you know, we're just so far beyond talking about issues at this point. I don't think it's going to be even a blip. We can try.
It breaks down to maybe 50,000 people per state anyway, right? It's not really that significant a number if you break it down that way.
Yeah, 32 states, it said Bloomberg. All right, really quickly, both candidates show up for the debate?
Sure, yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Up next, winners and losers. It is Friday, now time for winners and losers with the panel. Okay, you choose, Charlie, winner or loser first?
I'll go loser first. Okay. And that would be the system of email as an efficient form of communication in politics.
Totally agree.
Everybody's deleting their emails. They're not sending emails. It's all going to go back to phone calls and meetings in the park where people hold you with a toothpick and you hold your hand over your mouth.
How many bleach bits do you think?
Bleach bits.
It's happening. All right, winner.
I Googled that. And the winner, there is no winner. This is just the week without a winner.
Wow.
Except maybe possibly Canada, because on November 9th, there's going to be huge glut. And maybe that makes them a loser, actually, because Canada is going to have a huge surge at the southern border.
You can't have two losers, but that's all right.
All right.
Tim, winner and loser.
Michelle Obama, winner. Amazing speech yesterday. She was powerful. She was authentic. She connects to people the way that Hillary Clinton cannot, and that, quite frankly, the way her husband is not able to quite so much anymore because he's familiar goods, but she was powerful at the Democratic convention, as you remember, and she was just as powerful yesterday. Loser for me is Donald Trump, and that's a duh. That's a Captain Obvious move. I think that, number one, he had a terrible week. Numbers are down. Obviously, he's still fighting off all these accusations. And by the way, I think Time Magazine this weekend has the new cover, Total Meltdown. Not a good week for Donald Trump. He loses.
Winner and loser.
Loser, the GOP. They are now in the middle of a serious civil war. I thought it would likely end after the election. I'm now beginning to think it will be a permanent feature. About half the party will be pro-Trump, half will be in the Ryan camp, and it could end up with an actual split, something we haven't seen in 150 years. My winner, Bob Dylan. The answer is blowing in the wind. If Churchill could win the Nobel for Literature, so can Dylan, and I'm not even sure that Churchill could sing. But then again, neither can Dylan.
All right, winners and losers. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and